The earliest cases of abolition in the United States came from the Quakers. The major difference between abolitionists and anti-slavery supporters was that abolitionists wanted the immediate emancipation of slaves. The abolition movement really started to gain momentum in the early 19th century and became very prominent in the North in the 1830s, separating them from the South.
The Act of 1807 was the first act of many to be passed restricting the slave trade. In 1808, the importation of slaves from Africa had been banned by Congress. The Acts of 1818, 1819, and 1820 would restrict the slave trade, putting American ships at the coast of Africa and making slave trade the most heinous crime on the seas, being punishable by death.
The abolition of slavery involved three main parts: the runaway of slaves, literature, propaganda, and American anti-slavery conventions. The first was the actual freeing of slaves, or slaves attempting to gain their freedom. This mainly involved the Underground Railroad, which is a system of stops or different safe houses that slaves could go to while escaping through the South to gain their freedom in the North. The second main part of abolition was literature. Now, these could involve things like influential novels discussing the ideas of abolition, such as Uncle Tom's Cabin, or abolitionist newspapers and pamphlets, which were very successful in clearly stating and spreading different abolitionist ideas. Now, the third part was American anti-slavery conventions. Some conventions were purely about African American rights, such as the first anti-slavery convention in Philadelphia in 1833, and others were combined with women's rights conventions, as in the South, women's rights and African American rights were sort of seen as the same thing, especially by white males in the South.
Three major people of abolition were Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and William Lloyd Garrison. Harriet Tubman was a slave that escaped but returned 13 times to rescue her friends and family through the Underground Railroad system. She would later help recruit men for the raid on Harper's Ferry. Frederick Douglass was a social reformer and orator who, after escaping slavery, became a national leader of the movement. He was the most influential African American of the 19th century. He was known for his amazing oratory and anti-slavery writings. William Lloyd Garrison was best known for the abolitionist news article, The Liberator, which was founded in 1831. Although The Liberator was mostly followed by slaves and free African Americans, it eventually became very influential in the movement. He was an abolitionist and journalist that promoted immediate emancipation for slaves.
In 1861, the Civil War begins after the Deep South, also known as the Confederacy, secedes from the Union. In 1863, President Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation, stating that all persons who are held as slaves within the Confederate state are, and henceforth, shall be free. In 1865, the Civil War ends. Lincoln is assassinated, and the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery in the United States. The 13th Amendment reads, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction." The long-term effects of slavery are still evident in today's society. Although slavery was illegal, prejudice and discrimination was not. Racist terrorists like the KKK, the White League, and the Red Shirts were highly active after the abolishment of slavery. Many civil rights movements took place, led by such figures as Martin Luther King, eventually establishing full legal equality. Nevertheless, African Americans still regularly faced social and economic discrimination and had a large disadvantage among the white population. Many African American slaves resisted slavery. They either took a subtle approach by breaking tools or refusing to work hard, or they took a violent approach, like Denmark Vesey's failed attempt to lead a revolt in 1822, or Nat Turner's more successful revolt in 1831, killing over 60 slave owners.